What up? What up? All right. So it's a little later than I had anticipated. I was out shopping most of the afternoon, got a lot of things accomplished. Um, didn't get annoyed too much. Typically when I'm out shopping, certain things annoy me. Although when I was leaving Jewel Osco, which is a chain of supermarkets that I try to avoid, Mariano's is far superior. Pete's Fresh Market. The cashier is checking out, and I had a red onion, a red onion. It's red, purple actually, but red. And she couldn't figure out what the code was, and she is yelling around the to other cashiers saying, "What is the code for a green onion?" And I'm sitting there like, "Is this a comedy show here?" I'm like, "That's a red onion. It's not green." And she's like, "Oh, okay." She enters the code. It comes up papaya. I'm like, that's not a papaya. That would be a red onion. So we're sitting here for like a couple of minutes trying to figure out the code for one stupid red onion. Anyways, don't got a lot of time. 23 minutes before the debate. So I have the television in the background. I'm watching this dumb show, Wheel of Fortune, just spinning a wheel, and these people can't even guess, you know, what the word is, the phrase. The last one was fashion trendsetter, which they had a picture of me up there. No, just kidding. Okay, let's get to business. Political ideology certainly is important in politics. On Friday, I emphasized the difference between party and ideology. Political party, you could be Republicans and have a lot of different ideologies fall under your particular party or the big tent. I'll get into that later. But ideology is your set of beliefs in just what a role the government should have in our political system. And so, again, set of beliefs and values that shape your view on the role of the government. Some want big government, some want less government. So, this should remind you of the kind of, dovetails Unit 1, decentralists versus centralists, anti federalists versus federalists. We have a two-party system, and we have two basic ideologies that dominate our political scene, and that is conservatism and liberalism. Obviously, our Democratic candidates for president are liberal, but as you see with Bernie Sanders, he has a lot of elements of socialism. So again, just because you're liberal, or excuse me, just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean you're liberal. I would call Bernie Sanders a socialist, but he is running as a Democrat because there's no other party that's legitimate. Our two party system, it's either you're Republican or Democratic. Rand Paul was very libertarian, but he's not going to run under the Libertarian Party because they don't win. They are losers. So he has to run as a Republican. So, although we have a two party system, we have several different ideologies, and you could break them down into segments or different types of liberals and conservatives. We'll try to keep it as simple as possible. Not only this screencast, but I'll have about a 4.5 minute other video that hopefully will help break down the two major ideologies, conservatism and liberalism, that I will require you to watch on Ed Puzzle for Monday. So if you want to keep it simple, when you think of liberalism, think of progress, making progress as a society. So when you talk about, for example, legalizing same-sex marriage, the Supreme Court establishes that. We are progressing in the policy area of marriage. When you talk about legalizing marijuana in some states, you are progressing or making progress in looking at the public policy issue of drug legalization. So liberals tend to favor progress, and there's no real simple way to discuss liberalism. And sometimes when we break down issues, it's hard for kids to understand these two concepts. So as we proceed through next week, hopefully it'll become clearer. Now, this is where it becomes tricky. Classical liberalism, meaning liberalism after the passage of our Constitution, was less government. Essentially, it's the same as contemporary, today, conservatism. And the only reason I even have this on there is AP has asked about classical liberalism before. And so, liberalism, the idea of the role of government has changed. Originally, classical liberals believed in less government after the passage of the Constitution. So, this idea of Locke, less government, the government would simply play a role in protecting property and protecting us from other countries. What we have today, I would say contemporary or modern liberalism, is an expanded role of government, certainly in economic issues. So liberals believe the government should stay out of social issues, much like classical liberals, meaning if you want to marry someone of the same sex, if you want to have an abortion, if you want to smoke pot, most liberals, not all, would believe the government should stay out of social issues. However, they believe in a greatly expanded role of the government in economic issues. And this primarily explodes due to the Great Depression. So you have states, you have the federal government that is helping the states in policy areas, in states who are struggling economically, and people who are struggling economically with a variety of programs. So you must tax more, you must have bigger government if you're going to provide Social Security for those who are struggling when they retire, maybe don't have money. When you talk about unemployment benefits, when you lose a job, when you talk about welfare, when you're poor, all of these things are economic in basis. And so you have an expanded, or you're advocating, liberals, for an expanded role of government to bring about more equality in economic or in the economic realm. Obviously, you need a bigger government. You need more taxes to do that. So when you talk about the country as a whole, you're trying to bring a little bit of more equality from an economic standpoint. That is what modern liberalism, 20th century liberalism, is. And it's often referenced or tied to the New Deal in the early 20th century. Again, you have the government getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And as we proceed through the 20th century, you can talk about this link again to Unit 1, cooperative federalism. So as we strive for this liberalism or progress in the economic realm, this is greatly tied to cooperative federalism, the central government playing a much bigger role in policy areas that historically they never did. Again, when we talk about new federalism, you talk about Republicans or conservatives saying the government got too big. So you have this in the 70s, 80s, 90s, this idea that the federal government was getting far too big, was controlling or playing a role in far too many public policy areas that were never intended by the framers of the Constitution. So to address this, you have more moderate or in the middle Democrats, and you could argue that Hillary Clinton is not a moderate. Certainly, her husband was more towards the middle, not as liberal. So you have this movement of maybe toning down the role of government to address this new, really contemporary conservative movement of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and up to today. So new liberals basically kind of said, okay, yes, the government is getting a little big. If we're going to be successful as Democrats, we're going to have to tone down the role of the government a little bit. Bernie Sanders certainly would not fall in that category. Conservatism, think about tradition. We want traditional values. We want change to be very, very slow. So you'd be anti-abortion. Traditionally, we have not allowed women to have abortion. You'd be anti-gun regulation. Traditionally, you've been historically allowed to have guns without regulation. Anti-gay marriage. Traditionally, we have not allowed individuals of the same sex to get married. Anti-legalization of drugs. Traditionally, we have not allowed individuals to do drugs. So in social issues, those are all social, maybe not the guns, but social issues, you believe that the government should play a role in regulating those issues to protect tradition. So in economic realm, you believe that the government should not play a role. Government regulation in social issues to protect tradition, no government regulation in economic issues because traditionally the government hasn't played a role if you talk about the long history of our country. Again, we talked about the devolution revolution and this emphasis in evangelical Christians in the South. So, this movement with conservatism, Republicans, really focused on a lot of faith based issues, abortion, gay rights specifically. Um, the courts taking out a lot of religious aspect in schools, nativity scenes, public displays of religion, the Ten Commandments being posted. All of these things kind of lead to a resurgence of conservatism. And basically, the emphasis was on social issues. And this leads to a resurgence of the Republican Party in the 80s and the 90s. Neoconservatives or new conservatives tend to focus on maybe certain policy areas. And I've updated these notes and put in the current politicians that would fall under these different policies. So some conservatives focus on social policies. You talk about religious issues, anti-homosexuality or anti-gay marriage, anti-abortion, would emphasize the ability to have more religion in public settings. They may not care so much about economic, they may, but they may not. They may focus on social issues. Economic conservatives may care less about some of these social issues and really focus on the economy, less taxes, less government regulation. Uh, they're both conservatives. These are conservatives. These are conservatives, but they may emphasize either social or economic realms. And they may tie into that foreign policy. You have some of these candidates say, let's go bomb the heck out of the Middle East, ISIS, etc. These individuals may be focused on our military and a bigger military. Most conservatives like a strong military and heavy spending on military to protect our country. You also have some foreign policy neoconservatives like Rand Paul who want an isolationist view, meaning the government should not be going over and trying to spread democracy across the Middle East, for example. That it's a failed foreign policy. That would be certainly not the case with Donald Trump. He wants to spend more money on the military, bomb the hell out of the Middle East, as he says. And he'll probably say that tonight in about 12 minutes when the Republican debate begins. Socialism, Bernie Sanders. This is partial government ownership of industry, of different um, economic industries. Heavy regulation from the government, whether it be on pollution, whether it be on global warming. This tends to be issues that Democrats, liberals believe in. But if you're really truly socialist, you would have much more government regulation of industry than we have in the United States. We have socialist aspects in our economy, and this is certainly the opposite of capitalism, which is the free market where the government is not playing a role in the economy. Conservatives want capitalism. Liberals want a little more government control of the economy, not only to help individuals who are struggling for equality from an economic sense, but to make sure that products that citizens buy are safe and that we're not polluting the environment. And then we get into libertarians. Libertarians are a little bit of both. They want the government not to play a role in social issues and the government not to play a role in economic issues. They want as little government interaction or control as possible. Less taxes, less spending on defense, less government handouts for the poor. Um, Basically, they want very little government. It is the extreme. And Rand Paul is someone who would fall into that camp. Even though he ran as a Republican, his beliefs, his political beliefs, were libertarian in nature. So again, political ideology. I'm sure you're going to come to class with questions on Monday. Have a great time tomorrow with the Super Bowl. Watch a little bit of the debate tonight. Peace.